Yemenis remembered the 27th April 1993 as the first democratic event after the country unification. The U.S. Special Envoy Tim King says he is optimistic for ending the 7th-year war in the country. Despite focus on Ukraine war, Ramadan truce gives hope and relief for Yemeni people nationwide. Welcome to Yemen Today TV. This is the English news with me, Rushan Fouad. The first parliamentary elections held in Yemen was on 27 April 1993. It was a landmark political transformation in recent history. The General People's Congress emerged as the largest party, winning 123 of the 301 seats. More details are in the following report.
In May 1990, following the unification of the Northern Yemen Arab Republic and the Southern People's Democratic Republic of Yemen, a joint House of Representatives was set up to serve as the legislature for a 30-month transitional period, at the end of which parliamentary elections would be held. Government was shared by the General People's Congress, the former ruling party in the north, and the Yemen Socialist Party, which had ruled in the formerly Socialist South. The general elections were postponed once as a result of a continuing unrest and earlier political violence in the country. In November 1992, the country's political leaders announced that they had reached an agreement for elections to be held the following April. They were widely considered as the first free multi-party polls, not only in Yemen but also in the Arabian Peninsula as a whole. Thousands of candidates, including 49 women, for the first time entered the race for the 301 seats. The main contestants were the GBCs and the YSPs. They, however, faced a stiff challenge from the Yemen Alliance for Reform. Polling took place against a backdrop of disturbances and violence. Security was tight and voting was passive, as up to 90% of the registered voters reportedly went to the polls. The GBC won a total of 122 seats, falling short of an absolute majority. Despite the allegations of the opposition that there have been electoral malpractices, foreign election monitors declared that the irregularities had been minimal and couldn't be said to have tampered with the free and fair character of the elections.
The head of the Presidential Leadership Council, Rashad Mohammed Al-Alimi, arrived in the Saudi city of Jeddah on an official visit. Upon his arrival at King Abdulaziz International Airport in Jeddah, he was received by the advisor of King Salman bin Abdulaziz, Prince Khalid Al Faisal. Vice President of the Yemen Presidential Council, Aidarus Al-Zubaydi, said we are moving forward in establishing peace, security and stability in the region and fighting terrorism, but we will fight the Houthi militia if they continue its obstinacy and rejects calls for peace. Al-Zubaydi pointed out that there are many priorities facing the Presidential Council, the most important of which are starting to provide state services, paying salaries and establishing peace and security. The Minister of Information, Muammar Al-Eryani, affirmed the government's keenness to overcome the obstacles placed by the Houthi militia to operate commercial flights from Sana'a Airport. Al-Eryani said the government presented several options to facilitate obtaining the government passports for citizens. He indicated that the government is ready to set up an issuance center under the supervision of the United Nations, in addition to its willingness to issue passports to citizens from non-liberated areas in coordination with the UN. U.S. Special Envoy for Yemen Tim King voiced cautious optimism for efforts to end the 7-year-long war and warned that there is no more needs to be done. King said the new Presidential Leadership Council creates a more representative approach, adding that there are challenges in its road. As to Iran, King criticized it for its negative role in Yemen and its support for the Houthis. The new Presidential Leadership Council aims to rebuild vital public services and provide security across Aden and the liberated areas of the country. Days after it was sworn in, a new political stage in Yemen had begun, with its unfold challenges. The following report has more details.
While the Presidential Council wants peace, the option of war is also on the table if Houthis continue their attacks. This statement was raised by one of the Presidential Leadership Council members, as by designating the new Presidential Council, a new era had begun in Yemen, as well as significant challenges which put obstacles in front of the rebuilding service, which the Council is aiming to apply. Yemen's new Presidential Council is aiming to rebuild vital public services and provide security across Aden and other liberated areas in the country. As a result, the Council has set some priorities in the reconstruction plan, as they are aiming to start providing state services, pay salaries to civil servants, and establish peace and security across the capital Aden. The body's deputy head Major General said that the Council has been in an open-ended consultations with the Yemeni cabinet about drawing up a plan of action and the means to start implementing plans. He added, the Council has always taken the concerns and suffering of Yemeni people into consideration during the different stages of negotiations. And today, it's time to turn the Council words into actions, according to his statement. The dire economic state of one of the world's poorest nations will hamper the new administration's abilities. However, he said through austerity, fighting administrative corruption, and rationing state spending on the most vital areas would allow them to make progress. One of the major points of discussion for the new council was forming the leadership body to audit and oversee spending in a bid to crack down on corruption in the liberated areas of Yemen. Little progress has been made in moving towards lasting peace since the last round of talks in Sweden in 2019. However, hopes have been renewed with a ceasefire, halting bloody offensives, and Saudi-led coalition's agreement to allow flights into and out of the rebel-held Sana'a for the first time since 2015.
Despite the great attention that the war in Ukraine received, which has overshadowed other crises, the Yemen's truce helped to ease the suffering of people. It has given people hope and relief. The following report has more details on this.
As the Muslim holy month of Ramadan begins, the soaring cost of food rises in import-dependent countries like Yemen, creating greater challenge for millions of families who are already struggling to keep hunger at bay. Traditionally, this month is a month of festivities when families gather over traditional foods to break their day-long fast. This year, millions will be struggling to buy even the most basic food items for their families, as the war in Ukraine has pushed food prices even higher than the troubling levels at the start of the year. The prices of wheat flour and vegetable oil, two key food items in the diet of most families, have consequently risen across the region. Cooking oil prices have risen by 36% in Yemen. The cost of a basic food basket, the minimum food needs for a family per month, registered an annual increase with 81% hike in Yemen. This has badly affected the culture of giving in this poor country, and the ability of people who used to give away charity and free food during the holy month of Ramadan to help the poor. Even in the worst of times, the month of Ramadan was a period when people came together, a time when they shared meals, set up food tables along the streets for those who wanted to break fast, and sent iftar meals to each other's homes. Somehow they managed to find a way to share whatever little they had. However, this year things are different. Food inflation has squeezed the small income of millions of Yemenis, and the situation is getting worse as the conflict over Ukraine continues. Yemen imports around 42% of its wheat from Russia and Ukraine, as they are among the world's top producers of cereals and grains, including wheat. Both countries have suspended exports, causing flour and bread prices to shoot up in Middle Eastern and African countries. Also, aid organizations are facing lots of challenges. A large food distribution center in the capital Sana'a said that it can feed only 500 families compared to the more than 3,000 families it catered to last year. Unfortunately, aid from many international organizations too was seized by various groups at the port before reaching those in need. This has seriously affected the Yemeni people. Yemen was already one of the poorest countries in the world before the civil war started. Then the conflict drove millions of people to the deserts and forced them to live in tents and on the roadsides. They have nothing but humanitarian aid to rely on. And now even that is difficult with the current war in Ukraine. How can a country like Yemen survive with all these challenges? And how can Yemenis live with all these back-breaking burdens?
Yemeni ambassador to the U.S., Mohammed al-Hadrami, met in Washington the newly appointed U.S. ambassador to Yemen, Stephen Fagan. During the meeting, al-Hadrami wished the U.S. ambassador to Yemen all the best wishes and expressed gratitude to Washington's continued support to Yemen. The government forces recorded 181 violations committed by the Houthi militia within the past 2 days. In the West Coast, a number of 37 Houthi violations were recorded during the past 2 days, including infiltrations, targeting of military sites, and drone surveillance. Governor of Taiz Governorate discussed with the Saudi ambassador to Yemen opening a vital road to Taiz. The two sides agreed to inaugurate work in Hijat Road that links Taiz with other governorates in Yemen after the feast holidays. Torrential rain submerged dozens of temporary homes in the camps of Abu Jannab and the Ruwaik north of Ma'rib Governorate. Officials said heavy rains and winds swept away the camps, affecting more than 1,200 displaced people, including children and women. Camps north of Ma'rib Governorate housed dozens of families who fled from El Jawf after the Houthi militia took control of it at the beginning of the year 2020. Coming next. El Saleh Foundation continues aid efforts targeting displaced and needy people in different governorates.
احنا نزحنا للمخيم ذا قدام 3 سنوات، نزحنا من الحرب، وقعت بيننا عندنا في القرية اشتباكات عنيفة. الأمان مش أمان الحرب، الأمان إنك معك دور في بيتك، معك مصروف، تكون مأمن نفسك داخل بيتك أنت وعيالك. الجوع خلانا نفكر كثير، ما يكون البر موجود وكل شيء موجود، ترقد وأنت آمن مرتاح، ما يكون ما فيش، من أن ترقد؟
Welcome back. El Saleh Charity Foundation continues efforts to reach out displaced people through its cash assistance program. This report tracks the distribution process in Lahj Governorate.
The committees concerned with distributing Ramadan aid provided by Al Saleh Social Foundation for Development continued their work in Lahj Jawala area in Tuban district, targeting poor families and affected displaced persons and those fleeing the fires of war of the Houthi terrorist militia.
We thank and appreciate the Saleh Foundation for the initiative in targeting the people of Al-Ja'wala district and their efforts in helping the needy people in this area and also other areas within Adan and Lahj governorates. This is a kind gesture on the part of Ambassador Ahmad Ali as he targeted needy and displaced people at this critical time.
Citizens and displaced people found a breakthrough in providing their requirements during the remaining days of the holy month of Ramadan through the distribution of Al Saleh Social Aid for Development, after the citizens were stranded as a result of the interruption of salaries, while the distribution will continue during the next few days in different areas of Tuban district for the estimated 3,000 targets within the enterprise plan.
This is the fifth phase for us. Aids are distributed to a number of men and women who live in this area, who are either displaced or poor families. And we thank As-Salih Foundation as it has been helping around 3,000 cases of them.
نشكر مؤسسة الصالح للتنمية.
We thank As-Salih Foundation for providing assistance for people who live here and the displaced families. We hope for more. Hopefully, this is the start only in this critical time and hard condition that people live.
Al-Salih Foundation's Ramadan assistance comes to the citizens and the displaced alike to shake off some of the dust of the deteriorating economic situation imposed by the war ignited by the Houthi militia on the Yemeni people since the beginning of the year 2015.
In Hodeidah, Al-Salih Charity Foundation has launched its cash assistance program targeting displaced people in Al-Khawkha district. This is a part of a huge humanitarian project that the foundation is conducting in different governorates in Yemen. The following report has more details on this.
After surveys, verification, and accurate counting, it took several days for the aid to reach its beneficiaries. As-Salih Foundation inaugurated the Ramadan Aid Distribution Project in Hodeidah Governorate. It was inaugurated in Al-Khawkha district in the presence of the local authority.
Today, we launch in Al-Khawkha the distribution of Ramadan aid provided by As-Salih Foundation. We value the efforts from As-Salih Foundation to help displaced people in Al-Khawkha.
The Ramadan Aid Distribution Project will benefit more than 2,500 displaced families, orphans, and the poorest groups in the 6 displacement camps in the district and from all other districts of the governorate.
We thank As-Salih Foundation that has always been helping since the President Ali Abdullah Saleh. It has offered aid for people in Ramadan and aid clothes for kids. Today, we work hard to cheer up the displaced, poor, orphans and disabled.
Efforts to be thanked by the organizers of this charitable project, which brought back smiles to hundreds of displaced families and alleviated their suffering, especially with the approaching of Eid al-Fitr, which doubles the suffering of these families due to its needs for children's clothing and other requirements, at a time when these people do not have the resources to afford what they need.
We're distributing humanitarian aid from As-Salih Foundation in Hodeidah Governorate in Al-Khawkha to displaced and poor families. And we want to thank As-Salih Foundation, especially Ambassador Ahmad Ali Abdullah Saleh.
The beneficiaries appreciated the efforts of the foundation's organizers for their generous gesture and their sense of concern for the displaced and orphans in the displacement camps, expressing how thankful they are to the supporters.
The United Nations outlined that it's working to help prevent an ecological catastrophe in the Red Sea. David Grassley, the UN resident and humanitarian coordinator in Yemen, said the organization and Netherlands will co-chair a pledging event on 11th of May. The following report has more details on this.
Environmental contamination problems that have occurred or are projected to occur in the Yemeni territory are being overshadowed by the continuing conflict in Yemen. The FSO Safer oil tanker, moored on Yemen's western coast, north of Hodeidah, is the most serious pollution case affecting Yemen and its nearby coastal villages. The FSO Safer used to receive about 100,000 barrels of crude oil per day from the Ma'rib oil fields before offloading to vessels for export. The tanker currently sails near Yemen's most vital and environmentally sensitive maritime area. The corroded FSO Safer now holds around 1.1 million barrels of crude oil, despite the fact that it has not been repaired since the conflict began in 2015. Any unintentional leak would result in an oil spill that might spread to nearby marine and delicate coastal environments. The massive amount of oil expected to spill could result in a humanitarian and environmental disaster, affecting the biodiversity of about 115 Yemeni islands in the Red Sea, coral reefs, fisheries, and other land and marine habitats, as well as hundreds of thousands of Yemeni coastal communities. According to reports, the oil spill may harm more than 3 million farmers in Tehama, potentially polluting their agricultural areas. Furthermore, the fishing sector, which employs a major section of Yemen's population, would be socially and economically devastated. Hundreds of thousands of Yemeni fishermen would become unemployed as a result of the impending disaster. The tourism industry would also suffer greatly, and thousands more jobs will be destroyed. All of this would result in greater unemployment, aggravated famine, and the economic collapse of coastal communities.
Here is a reminder of the main headlines. Yemen is remembered the 27th April 1993 as the first democratic event after the country unification. The U.S. Special Envoy Tim Renderking says he is optimistic for ending the 7th-year war in the country. Despite focus on Ukraine war, Ramadan truce gives hope and relief for Yemeni people nationwide. This is the end of the news. It was Roshan Fouet. Thank you for watching.